I feel bad sometimes for Becky when she's up here singing because sometimes I end up singing the wrong verse. And I try to sing loud, and here I am singing the wrong verse in some of the songs, and Becky tried to stay on the right one, and so I feel bad for her at times. We're going to be in 1 John chapter 2 today. We're going to continue our study in 1 John. And we're mainly going to stay in 1 John chapter 2. So open your Bibles to 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2. When you come to church, there's certain topics that you know that we're going to talk about. You know, there's certain things that, you know, they call them Sunday school answers. Who loves you? God. You know that's going to be right. The answers for Sunday school is going to be God, Jesus, the Bible. One of those things, if it's not that, it's probably the gospel or the cross. When you come to church, you know sooner or later we're going to talk about sin. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about sin. And my question is, what is the big deal with sin? Right? Like, really, I'm not a murderer. We say, you know, I'm not murdering people. I'm not a drunk driver. You know, I'm not using drugs. I'm not stealing. I'm a pretty good person. So who cares if I commit a couple sins here and there? I'm a good person. Who cares if my whole life is great except one small little area that no one ever sees, no one knows about, it doesn't affect anyone? Who really cares? God forgives me, right? I'm saved, I'm not going to hell, so, you know, who really cares? Well, the reality is this. God cares. And we can say, yeah, but He forgives me. The reason He cares is when we allow sin a foothold in our life, we lose fellowship with Him and with others. The idea that sin is harmless to anyone but me is a lie from Satan. It's a lie that we tell ourselves to make it okay. Like, oh, I just cuss. You know, I just use foul language. You know, I only do it at work with the other guys, and they all cuss too, so it's no big deal. Well, guess what? When you cuss, you're breaking fellowship off with God, and you're breaking fellowship off with other believers. And you go, well, they never know. Except when you're on at church working in the playground in the backyard, and all of a sudden the pastor thinks he's stronger than he is, he drops the ladder on your foot, and he cuss at him. And then you're just looking at each other like, oh, that just happened. We may think that sin doesn't affect other people, but it does. It breaks off fellowship with other believers. It breaks off fellowship with God. And John, knowing that we have this idea that sin isn't that big of a deal, writes 1 John. And tells us that sin is a big deal. And in chapter 2 of 1 John, he wants us to understand how big of a deal it is. 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 and 2 says this. It says, "My little children, these things I write to you so that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous." The reason for John is writing chapter 2 is so that we don't willingly sin. He doesn't want you to sin. And the excuse that many Christians say, well, we're all sinners, we're all going to do it, so who cares? Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13 says that God is faithful and just, that He's not going to tempt you beyond what you're able. And that if you are tempted to sin, He is faithful and just, and He'll provide a way for you not to sin. God doesn't want you to sin. But if you do, don't lose hope. If you do sin, don't lose hope. Why? Verse 2 says this. It says that if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father, and that's the end part of verse 1, and He Himself is the propitiation for our sins, and not our sins only, but for the whole world. That He is a sacrifice for our sins, that He's taken our sins away. I'm writing this so you don't sin. But if you sin, don't worry, God will forgive you and give you another shot. I'm writing this so that you don't sin, but if you do, God will forgive you. So knowing why John is writing chapter 2, let's look at what does it mean to know God. Verses 3 and 4 says this. Verses 3 and 4. Now by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. We're talking about sin here, and John then, from talking about sin, saying, I'm writing this so you don't sin, he then talks about knowing God. And some people say, well, how's this dealing with sin? Well, it is because we have to understand what knowing someone is. Knowing someone, it's more than acquaintances, it's more than friends, it's an intimate knowledge of someone. It's an intimate knowledge, what they like, what they don't like, what they require of you. Knowing someone. Most of us are married and we have a husband or a wife. You know them, right? Lewis, you know Kathy. You know what she likes and what she doesn't like, and you learn more about her every day. If you know that she does not like you to drink chocolate milk at night, and that bothers her, are you willingly going to drink chocolate milk at night? Why don't you someone else, son? No, honestly, we're going to say, well, that really bothers her. She doesn't like that, so we don't do it. All right? There's certain things that I do, which is very surprising to all of us, that Katie doesn't like. I know that's very shocking. Let's just take a minute to accept that fact. But there are things that I do that Katie doesn't like. And you know what I try to do? I try not to do those things. Because I know her. I know what pleases her and what displeases her. And I want to have a good relationship with her. And so I do that which pleases my wife. If we want to have a good relationship with God, if we want to say we know God, it means that we're going to know what He likes and what He doesn't like. What we should do and what we shouldn't do. Because if you truly know someone, you're not going to want to make them mad at you. Well, you shouldn't want to make them mad at you. So what John says is that this, in verse 3, I'll read it again. It says, now by this we know that you know Him, if you keep His commandments. If you know God, you're going to keep His commandments. You're not going to want to sin. If you know God, you're going to strive not to sin. Does that mean you're perfect? No. Does that mean that you're never going to sin? No. Is this talking about salvation? That I know Jesus, I'm saved? No, this isn't talking about salvation. This is talking about a close relationship with a Christian and God. A close relationship where the Christian strives to please God. Where a Christian does everything they can to please a loving God. What does that look like? Well, it's keeping His commandments. Well, how do we know what His commandments are? Read the Bible. You can't say that I'm a good Christian if you never read the Bible. Because if you never read the Bible, you don't know what He requires of you. And if you don't know what He requires of you, how can you keep it? How can you do that which pleases God if you don't know what pleases God? So knowing God is more than salvation. It's reading the Bible so that you don't sin and break fellowship with Him. Knowing God is reading the Bible so that you know what not to do to please God. Verse 3, 1 John chapter 2 says this, now by this we know Him, if we keep His commandments. Verse 4 says, he who says, I know Him, and does not keep His commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. If we say, I'm a good Christian, I know God. I go to church every Sunday. I write a check every time the offering plate comes around. Even if it comes around twice, I'll write 2 checks. I go to Wednesday night services. I'm at church when no one else is there. I'm a good Christian. But I just have this area of sin in my life that's just mine. And then we don't know God. Knowing God isn't doing a list of requirements, going to church, doing choir, doing a praise team, being an usher, teaching Sunday school. All those things are good, and we should do that. But that doesn't make you a good Christian. That doesn't mean you know God. Knowing God is keeping His commandments. And if you allow sin just to run rampant, even in a little tiny area of your life, then you don't know God. And if you don't know God, fellowship with Him is broken, and fellowship with others is broken. And you're a liar if you think you're a good Christian. And the truth is not in you. Now that's a big pill to swallow, because here's the reality. We all have sin in our lives. That's our pet little sin. When I was in 3rd grade, we had a pet hamster. I love animals. They taste delicious. It's amazing. There was this little gerbil hamster thing in our 3rd grade class. And we were able to take it home. You know, every student had a weekend to take it home. And you had to feed it, you had to play with it, let it get bite you and all that fun. And we loved it so much. And it was so much fun. And I killed it. I don't know what I did, but I remember my parents having to buy a new one because it was dead. My fault. It was my little pet. And I did everything I could to keep it alive. I played with it now and then. Now, I didn't have it when I went outside. I didn't carry it with me. It was just in a little corner in the house. But when I went over there, it was all about that hamster, right? Or gerbil, that furry little thing. And I would pet it, I would play with it. But then I'd wash my hands and go on with my life. And that gerbil would just be there, waiting for me to come back. Waiting for me to hold it. Maybe I squeezed it too hard, who knows? But it'd just wait for me right there. And many of us have a sin like that we keep it away. And then when no one's around, we walk over and open the door and take our sin out. And isn't this so enjoyable? Oh, someone's coming. Go over here. I'm a good Christian. I go to church. I'm a deacon. You know, I help out with the meals. I teach Sunday school. I'm such a good Christian. Bye. My sin is waiting for me. We keep our sin hidden from people, and yet we say that we know God. We all do it. We all have a secret sin. We all struggle with something. And God says that if you let it go unchecked, if you let it go unchecked and reign in your body and let it have control over you, you don't know God. How can you say you know God and don't follow His commandments? And what is the commandment? Be holy as I am holy. If we know Him, we won't sin. Let's start in verse chapter 3. Now by this we know that we know Him, if we keep His commandments. If we know God, we're following after His word. We're letting sin have no control over us, and we have fellowship with Him and fellowship with others. If we know Him. And he who says, I know Him, and does not keep His commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. And you know what that means? That we have no fellowship with God, and we have no fellowship. Our fellowship is broken with God and others. Sin is a big deal. Sin destroys our relationship with God and others. It might not today. You may have a great relationship with your church today. But keep letting sin reign in your body, and it's going to chip away at the fellowship of believers. And all of a sudden, you might not want to get out of bed Sunday morning. Oh, I would go to church, but it looks like there's weather happening outside, so I'm going to stay in bed. You know, I would go to church, but you know what? My iron, it's downstairs, I'm upstairs. And all of a sudden that sin is creeping its way into every part of our life. And we're not going to want to be surrounded by the light. We're going to want to keep ourselves in darkness. Because our fellowship is broken with God and with others. If you know God, you're going to keep His commandments. Going on to verse 5 and 6, it says this. But whoever keeps His word truly loves, the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in Him. He who says he abides in Him ought himself to walk just as He walked. Now we move from knowing God, I mean we want to do everything to please God, to the love of God. Again, we're talking about sin having a part in our lives. And it says this, whoever keeps his word, if we do his commandments, follow his commandments, truly the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know we are in him. This, again, is not talking about salvation. The love of God being perfected in us is not talking about salvation, but a close relationship with God. I'm going to use Lewis and Kathy with the chocolate milk illustration again. Lewis wants Kathy to love him. He wants to foster a love relationship with Kathy. And so you know what he's going to do? He's going to drink his chocolate milk at the kitchen table like he's supposed to at dinner time, and then wash his cup and put it in the dish drainer so that Kathy is pleased with him, and that Kathy is going to have an easier time loving on Lewis, and their love is going to grow, and her love will be perfected in him. Why? Because he followed the rules of drinking chocolate milk at the table. Now, I don't know if that's a rule of their house. This is just an illustration, So if you see Lewis drinking chocolate milk on the couch, there's nothing wrong. But the idea is this, that when we follow the commandments of God, his love is perfected in us, meaning we have an even closer relationship with God. And the more we do it, the closer we are to God. The more we obey, the closer we are to God. And every day the love of God grows stronger and stronger and stronger in us. Think about it maybe like a new piece of technology. You get a new iWatch, an Apple Watch, I guess that's what they're called. And at first you really don't know how to use it. It rings and vibrates and lights up on your wrist now and then. But then you start playing with it and you start understanding it more and more. All right? Then you understand the technology even more and more. And soon, you can't stop playing with your iWatch or your Apple Watch. You can't stop looking at it. Also, you're shaking and doing your text messages on this little teeny weeny screen when you have a big 10-inch screen in your pocket. Or a new car. At first, you don't know where the blinkers are. You don't know where the headlights are. You can't find the windshield wipers. And you're sitting there like me going, these knobs are going to do it. These knobs, I don't know how to get the AC on. It's going to have the letters A and C on it. Where is it? But soon you get comfortable with it, right? And then you sit down and it has the form of your body. You're comfortable. You're able to do anything you want. It's the same with the love of God. The more we follow him, the stronger our love for him and his love for us is generated in us. If we want to be consumed with the love of God, follow after him. Keep his commandments. Follow after him. Whoever keeps his word, the love of God is grown in him and is made perfect in him. By this we know we are in him. We've all seen that one person in our lives that when we're with them, it's like they just have this amazing relationship with God that just oozes over to everything they do. Do you know why that is? The love of God is perfected in them because they're following after his commands. The love of God is perfected. He who abides in him ought himself to walk just as he walked. That means that we love as Jesus loved. If we are going to have his love perfected in us, not only are we going to keep his commandments, we're going to do what Jesus did. And what's that? Love others. What does that mean? Serving others. If we are going to have the love of God perfected, it's not enough to follow after his commands. We also have to do what Jesus did, which is love others with a selfless love. How can I serve you today? How can I serve you? McDonald's struggled for a while with their image. And we all understand why. You go to the drive-in and they're yelling at you. And you say, no, I want a Diet Coke. Okay, that's 3 large Cokes. No, a Diet Coke. Okay, a Sprite. No, sir. A Diet Coke. 10-piece chicken nuggets. So McDonald's struggled with reputation. So you know what they did? They changed the way their workers had to interact with us. They had to smile. You shouldn't have to teach a Christian to smile. When you see someone, smile. How can I help you today? And he walked in and the people were like, how can I help you today? What do you want? Oh, look at that go, a Sprite? Got a 10-piece nugget? But the whole idea was for them to be happy that they could serve you, and if you were happy back, they might even pay for your meal. I never got a free meal at McDonald's, and I never really seen them smile that much. But amazingly enough workers at McDonald's did that their reputation started growing again. Why? Because they said, we want you to serve people with a smile on your face. And McDonald's is doing great again. They were really never struggling that much, but that little campaign changed a lot for them. That's how we should be with Jesus. How can I serve you, Kevin? Why do I say that? Because I am being perfected in the love of God, because I'm following His commandments, and so I want to serve you. Not this false serving, like some servers at McDonald's, but a true love for my fellow human beings. That's what Jesus did. And if we want to be in great fellowship with God and others, that's what we should do. Moving on, it says this in verse 7, Brethren, I write no new commandment to you, but an old commandment, which you have had from the beginning. The old commandment is a word which you've heard from the beginning. And what had they heard? What is this old commandment that John is talking about? In John chapter 13, verse 34. John chapter 13, verse 34 says this, A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. That's John chapter 13, verse 34. John here is saying, hey, this isn't new information, guys. This isn't something new that's coming down that you guys need to check out. He's saying this is something that Jesus said. They need to love one another. You need to serve one another. Just as Jesus did. He's pointing to Jesus. He's saying this, if you want to have a great relationship with God and others, let's look at Jesus. What did He do? He followed the commands that God gave Him. He followed after God. He loved other people. And that's what we need to do. We need to love. And then in verse 8 it says this, Again, a new commandment I write to you, that which is true in Him and in you, because the darkness is passing away, and true light is already shining. Now He's saying, hey, this is an old commandment, but now He's saying it's a new commandment. So what has changed? What makes this a new commandment? One, because of what Christ did on the cross. He gave us the ability to love like He did. Loving others was not a new commandment. We always should do it. But what makes it new is it's now a sacrificial love. For up until this time, in the Jewish and even the Greek philosophy, if I loved on you, it's because I wanted something. I'm going to take you out to dinner, David. I'm going to give you some steak, some potatoes, some onion rings, and don't worry about eating vegetables. It's just French fries. I'm good. Why? Because I'm going to be in your town. I'm going to be speeding tomorrow. And I want you to, Now, I'm loving on him, right? I'm taking him out of state. But why? Because it's going to help me out. All right? Justin, I know that I have a science test coming up, so you know what? I know you like dolphins, I'll buy you a dolphin. I'm the dolphin for you, so when that science test comes out blank, just remember, A. I didn't do it because I love Justin. I don't know if he likes dolphins or not. But I did it because I wanted something in return. Loving others was common because I was going to get something back. But now, John is saying, hey, not only do you need to love others, it needs to be a sacrificial love where you get nothing in return. nothing in return. That, you know what, I'm going to love you. Why? Because you're made in God's image. And God wants to love you, and I want to love you. That's a new commandment. That's groundbreaking. That is earth-shattering. That I'm going to love you because God loves me. And you're made in His image. A new command I give you. To love one another. Again, a new commandment I write to you. That which is true in Him and in you. Because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. Christ has died for our sins. And the light of the world has entered. And because of that, we can have sacrificial love. Why? Because Jesus died for me. He sacrificed His love for me while I was yet a sinner. Christ died for me. His love is the reason I can sacrificially love. Moving on to verses 9 and 11, it says this. He who says he is in the light and hates his brother is in darkness. Until now, he who loves his brother abides in light, and there is no cause for stumbling in him. But he who hates his brother is in darkness, and walks in darkness, and does not know where he is going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes. He who says, this is again verse 9, he who says he is in the light and hates his brother is in darkness. What he's doing here, he's using light and darkness as knowing God and not knowing God. It's a wordplay, and what he's saying is this. If you know God, you're going to love other people. You're going to know God. You're going to love other people. You're going to follow His commands. And the truth is going to grow in you. The love of God is going to grow in you. But if you say this, I'm a good Christian, but I hate those people down there. Ooh, they're weirdos. They have that hair. They have that face, that nose. They're not my people. I'm not going to let them come to my church. If you hate someone, you don't know God. If you hate someone, the love of God is not in you. Why? Because the love of God is a sacrificial love that He died for everybody. He didn't say, I'm only going to die for people that look like Jon Morris. No. He said, I'm going to die for the world. I'm going to love the world. That love holds no bars. There's nothing holding that love back. And if we say that we don't like someone, then we don't know God. We do not love God. And we are in darkness. The love of God causes us to love other people. If you can't love someone, then you have a problem with your relationship with God. That there's sin in your life holding you back from knowing God. Again, this is all about our sin and our relationship with God. That if we have sin in our life, if we don't love someone, if we're not following His commandments, then we don't know God. Our relationship with Him is broken. Don't deceive yourself. But if you love others, and you're following His commandments, your relationship with God is right, your relationship with others is right, and the love of God is going to be perfected in you. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us today? Well, I think it leaves us is this question. Do you, right now, right where you're sitting, do you, at this moment, know God? Well, I think I do. Well, let's ask this question. Is there sin running free in your life? Is there sin running free in your life? Next question. Do you hate anyone? A lot of Christians say, well, I don't hate anyone. I just can't stand that person. I'll never be in the room with that person. I'll never sit at the dinner table with that person. Let me tell you a secret. You hate them. Do you hate anybody? If the question was yes, To either of those questions, I have this to say. You don't know God. Your relationship with Him is broken. Your fellowship with others is going to be broken. And I encourage you to come forward and repent and say, God, forgive me. Because what does it say in verses 1 and 2 of 1 John chapter 2? My little children, these things I write to you so that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, if we were able to say yes to if there's sin reigning in your life, and there's people I hate, if you were able to say yes to that, it says this: we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous, and He's forgiving you. You just need to confess. And then you once again know God, and your fellowship will be restored. Do you know God today? Or do you need to repent? Let's pray. Father God, the question is this: do we know God? To answer that, we have to ask, do I have sin in my life that goes unchecked? And do I hate people? They're hard questions that we don't want always to find an answer to. But if the answer is yes, Lord, let us come forward and do business with you. Because you say that you will forgive us and restore fellowship. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. As Becky comes forward to lead us in song, my question is this: do you know God right now? Do you know God right now? If not, do business with God. Becky?